remember being just as old as them and singing in the church. And I'm so grateful to God after 25 years still being in church. Yes, I had my ups and downs, and everyone has their ups and downs, and life becomes difficult at some point. But it's such a blessing to be raised in this kind of context where you're being taught about God, about Jesus constantly, and no matter what life brings at you, no matter what life throws at you, God still finds a way to protect you and to keep you there where you need to be. So praise God. I'm really happy about that, and I'm pretty sure everyone that's here today has similar experiences. Let's open up our Bibles in John chapter 8. I'm going to read the verse, and I'm going to source the message for this morning from this verse. I'm pretty sure you read this verse many times, and it's good to refresh our memory constantly. And I'm pretty sure that the more we read it, the more we dive into it, the more impact it will bring into our lives. John chapter 8, verse 12. Jesus says, "I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life." The light of life. It's usually 12 a.m., sometimes tapping into 1 a.m., and I'm heading towards my bedroom. I'm tired. I turn off all the lights, and I have a hallway from my living room area to the bedrooms. There's a hallway around 5 meters long. And as I walk through it, especially after you turn off the lights, until your eyes adjust, you can actually see a lot less than you would see if you were spending a bit of time in the dark. So you turn off the lights, I turn off the lights, and I walk. And this is the way I walk. And sometimes I use the phone, the screen light, but it's not enough. And I even get annoyed, like, why does it not work? It doesn't provide it doesn't give me any light that I need. It doesn't help me guide myself. So I kind of default to this other method. Yes, I could turn on the flashlight, but sometimes I'm like the effort of scrolling and pressing a button. So I default to going, as I said, going like this. And the question is, why do you think I do that? I walk down that hallway probably 500 times, at least, in the dark. Yet, I still have to do this. When I go, I have to make sure that I can have some sort of precautions in place where I protect myself. Because at some point, I didn't do it, or I did trust my own ability, my memory, my wisdom, thinking, yes, I know it so well that nothing would happen to me. And of course, I probably went a bit to the left, and as I was walking, I hit my toe off the door frame, and it hurt quite a lot. Now let's take this whole experience into the spiritual realm and think about it. Think about it for a second. We do the same spiritually. We tend to do this. Because we start to live off experiences and memories that we think or we remember that there was a light on at some point in our house, and we remember the way a room or a hallway used to look, and we just say exactly as Samson said at some point, I'm just going to do the same as before. I'm just going to walk the same hallway that I walked 500 times. I'm just going to do the same up until a point where something unpredictable, like an unforeseen event happens, and you trip, you fall, you hit yourself, you get a bruise, you get a cut, you need to get stitches. Sometimes depends on the severity of the injury that you're going through. You always think that nothing would change or you can trust your own abilities, but as I said, something unforeseen, like an unforeseen event might happen. And I never stepped on so many toys in my whole 30 years of life. I never stepped on as many toys as I did in the last 6 months. It's because my son is just laying them all over the place right now. And it doesn't matter if I use my phone light sometimes. Even then, I can't see them. There's traps all over the place. So I always end up stepping on something or, hitting myself. And yet I don't change. Yet I still go like this. There's light switches right at the start. There's a light switch right at the start of the hallway, and then there's another one down the end. But that's how we are. That's how we are, and I mean it spiritually as well. That's exactly how we are. We just trust our own abilities. Yes, I can make it through the hallway. It's only 5 years. Like, nothing can happen. It's straight. You just have to walk straight. It doesn't matter that you don't see. You just have to walk straight. And now I have a very genuine question for you. Genuinely. From a spiritual standpoint, emotional standpoint, or in our earthly lives, I wonder if we would have the exact same amount of bruises, of cuts, of stitches on our bodies, or even certain marks or tattoos. I wonder if we would have the exact same amount if we were walking in the light. Think about it. I know I don't want to bring some sort of a regret, and not necessarily sometimes you need some sort of cuts or stitches, as we say, we learn from these kind of experiences and we know to turn on the light, or we learn how to guide ourselves. So you need sometimes to experience that. But I'm genuinely thinking or asking myself, if I was walking in the light during those moments, would God have to allow me to hit my toe off the door frame? So this is what the message is this morning, the light, about the light of life, what Jesus can actually provide to you. I don't want to, as I said, I don't want to bring this idea of a regret of what happened in the past and the events that you could have avoided. But what I do want to is to motivate you about walking in the light so that you don't have to go through anything, any negative experiences or anything that hurts you. No more stitches, no more cuts. And I'm pretty sure if you think about the most devastating thing that happened to you in your life, if I was to say that the message from this morning, the words that I'm going to say today are going to help you avoid that kind of experience to never happen again in your life, I think it should be one of the most motivational things for you to actually want to live in the life that Jesus provides. The light that Jesus provides. But the question is, so why do people walk in the dark? Why do people actually choose dark? There's different categories of people that experience darkness. And Jesus says it himself. We know John 3:16, we read it often, we remember it, we memorize it. 2 verses down, or even the very next verse, Jesus says, well, for God so loved the world, he gave his only son, and then says why God sent his son on earth. And the purpose was not to judge the world, but to bring light into the world. And then he says in verse 19, because you're wondering, like, okay, it's such a free gift. What Jesus is giving to everybody, it doesn't cost anything. What's wrong with actually adopting the light that comes from Jesus? And he says, well, people loved the darkness rather than the light because their works were evil. For everyone who does wicked things hates the light and does not come to the light, lest his works should be exposed. And that's the truth. You will see there's different categories of people living in different types of darkness. Well, the same darkness, but there are different categories of people because they assess darkness differently. But in this case, a very small compromise that you're living with would keep you away from the light. It doesn't need to be something big. Usually people don't have a problem coming to the light when they have something big, which is quite obvious and everyone knows about it. But when you have something small, you'd rather stay in that darkness because you know just 1% of a compromised conscience is enough for you not to come to the light. 1%. 1%. You can do 99% things right. You just have to do one thing wrong to keep you away from the light. One thing wrong, imagine. And that's what the majority of people choose, or why they choose darkness. Well, the other reason is because, obviously, when you come to the light, everyone thinks about this. You think that all your cuts, your stitches, the tattoos, the marks that you've gotten from living in the dark would come to the surface and people will start judging you. Yes, that's very, very genuine feeling that you're getting and what you're thinking and why you're scared to come to the light. But we'll see later on that this is not the case. This is genuinely not the case. Another reason why people are in the dark is if you're blind. Well, everyone is spiritually blind. When you're born, we are born spiritually dead. And as Ephesians says, there's a cover over our eyes and we can't see. We're born in that. And imagine a blind person. You can live in darkness and not know that you're in darkness. Yes. If you say to a blind person that there's no light, light doesn't exist. Imagine a kid that's 2 years old, blind. And he's raised in a culture where you tell him there is no light. Nobody can see. Imagine he was raised by another 10 blind individuals. That kid would never believe that the light or the idea of sight actually exists. They would think that's a myth. It's a legend. It is not something that is actually real. The same way happens, and we live among individuals that are spiritually blind. They live in darkness. Their whole life spent in darkness. And that's another category of people that they don't experience light because purely they don't know that it exists. There's another category of people that experience darkness, but they think they live in the light. And this is very dangerous. And you may guess where you may find those kind of people. It's the ones that claim to have light. It's the ones that claim that they're led by the Spirit, but they actually live in a lot of darkness. You see, during Jesus' time, the religious leaders at that time, they were living in a lot of darkness. And they thought they had light. They thought they were okay. They had the doctrine, the theology, perfectly aligned. Everything was fine. But they were living in deep darkness. The hypocrisy that they were going through was basically the strongest sign that there was nothing in them. Jesus would constantly condemn them, and he would say constantly, "You are blind. You're so blind that if you're to lead somebody," and he called them blind leads. That's exactly what he called them. If you're to lead somebody, you will end up falling into a trap or a pit. And then not only you fall in it, but you bring the other person with you as well. That's how blind they were, but they thought they had the light. They thought everything was fine. And they form all these, they create all these parameters around them, all these rules to make sure that they're walking in the light. Or at least to give them the impression that they do so. So, just to give you an example, you might have, exactly as Paul would say, individuals that would say, don't touch, don't eat, don't drink that. Exactly as you would do for people that experience leprosy, you'd try to create these sort of rules for them because they don't know, they wouldn't have a feel through, their nervous system wouldn't actually activate. So if they were to touch a hot stove, their skin would melt without them actually realizing. And the same way these spiritually dead people that live in darkness would create rules for other individuals. And not only they create the rules for themselves, but for the other individuals, and they would condemn you for not following them. So, to give you an example, if you were to walk in your darkness, if you were to walk and actually not put your hands up, exactly as I was telling you, not try to, feel the places and feel the environment around you, they would come to you and they would say, "How dare you not put your hands up?" Well, see, you hit yourself because you didn't have the hands up. Nothing to do with leading you to the light. Nothing to do with telling you what Jesus is, sending you to Jesus. But just creating rules. If you want to be feeling bad, if you want to do things well, then you have to, put your hands out. no matter what level you're at, you're going to need that light, and we all know who the light is. And we all know how much value Jesus can actually provide to the work that he does, through the work that he does in our lives. And, you might see us, people that turn to Jesus, people that follow Jesus, we're not the same. We don't have the exact same source of light that he does. We need to make kind of a separation this morning and realize the differences. When we turn to Jesus and we start to follow his path and we start sourcing from him, we're not exactly the source of light that he is, as in the sun. Jesus is exactly like the sun. An endless source of energy, something that doesn't end, something that doesn't need to be turned on and turned off. You don't need to give electricity. It doesn't need batteries. It just continues to burn constantly. Now us, we are exactly like, I actually bought I bought one of those lights that has a small solar panel from Mr. Price. I paid €1 for it, which is crazy. I never thought I could get so much value out of something that you pay €1 for. And I put it in a bush in front of my house. It's been more than half a year ago, and I can't believe that something that I paid the €1 for still shines. But that's exactly what we are, us Christians, when we turn ourselves to Jesus, when we are claiming to source the light from him. We get those solar panels, they get kind of implemented into us. They are created inside our hearts. And we start drawing that energy, taking that energy, the sun. We start charging ourselves up. And then when the dark comes, we start lighting that energy all around us. So when you have Jesus, you actually turn into one of those lamps and you start shining around. And I've seen this quite often where individuals would, not that I would be that amazing, not that my light would be so strong, but when the darkness is deep, as Jesus was saying in other contexts, even a small little bit of light is actually quite interesting. And you see, even if there's a blind person around you, spiritually dead, especially because we do come across individuals that never experience light. Quite a lot of them. In work, you don't have individuals that know what light actually is. But when they see you, even if it's someone blind, they can feel your warmth, they can feel something. And they do tend to draw near you. Sometimes they come to you temporarily, and they only spend a bit of time with you, only for that time until you shine or you give them enough visibility so that they can make their steps, But you know what's interesting? The closer you go to someone, and the more you shine around them, if they're not ready to actually receive the source of light that comes from Jesus, do you know what they'll tell you? Like, no, step away. Because they're concerned that if your light is too strong, you might actually reveal their stitches, you might actually show their cuts, their marks, their tattoos, the things that they're ashamed of. So I said this before as well, I had situations where I feel like God is putting me or kind of placing me into someone's life temporarily until I guide them a bit. But then sometimes I feel like I don't know how to manage myself things properly, and maybe I'm getting too close or I'm not keeping the right distance so that they lose the interest. But I'm wondering often, why do I provide light for them to kind of guide a bit, and then sometimes things go wrong? Go wrong as in they no longer need that light or want that light, and it's not a situation where they actually found the source of light, which is Jesus. Anyway, that's a different point, which kind of I'm still wondering. I'm trying to understand things. I guess everyone kind of gets a chance. If you want to follow Jesus, fair, or if you want to be guided to Jesus, fair. If you don't want to, even Jesus says himself not to force yourself or force himself into somebody's life. But I had this experience a couple of years ago, because it's such an amazing thing when you meet individuals that have this light that comes from Jesus. You can feel it. It's crazy. I was managing a team of individuals that were all Islamic, coming from Islamic contexts. We're all Muslim. I never thought that any of them would be Christians. But there was this one guy, he was Syrian. And he was actually crazy. I never met him in person because most of them were working at home. It was during the COVID times, and I only had like 3 or 4 people in the office, and then I had about 15 people at home. And even not seeing him, even from not, like engaging with him in person, face to face, I could feel there was something different about this guy. But I never thought that, him coming from Syria would actually be Christian. Until one day, it was Easter, and I seen him posting something on Facebook. Yes, Facebook, because we are old, because I'm old. And I've seen him posting something about Jesus and the resurrection. And I texted him straight away, and I said, man, I felt it. I felt his light. It was amazing. It was amazing. And one of the most amazing things that you see Jesus expressing about somebody else is what he said about John the Baptist. If you look in John, it was in John chapter 5, there was exactly similar to what I was saying previously. I can't remember where I have now, because I had all these points, I had them all lined up perfectly fine, and just before I came to church, I left these sheets of paper on my bed, and my son came up and he made sure to put them in his own order. In John chapter 5, I remember there was that situation where there was this man who couldn't walk for 38 years. He was healed, so the light of Jesus was shining on him. And imagine in the kind of darkness that people had to live at that time. So there's this guy, he sits beside those pools that were supposed to heal you. He was sitting there for 38 years, not being able to walk, in his own darkness. And then after 38 years, he gets healed by Jesus like this. And when the people see him, what do you think the people say? Man, I'm so happy finally the light of God is shining on you. What did the people say? The Jews said, how dare you? How dare you not walk like this? How dare you pick up your bed in a day of a Sabbath? Imagine how deep that darkness was. And that's exactly what happens nowadays as well. But anyway, that's where Jesus starts kind of annoying the Jews. And then the Jews come at him and they start kind of, fighting with him constantly. And they start hating on him for doing that miracle there. And then Jesus says to them, in a couple of verses down in that same chapter, he says, well, do you know what? When John the Baptist came to you, he was a lamp. Very interesting, because even in John chapter 1, verse 6, he says, John was there to witness about Jesus, but he was not the light. Very specifically mentions that. John the Baptist was not the light. And then Jesus says this about John the Baptist. He was a burning, which is such an amazing thing. I wish Jesus would say this about all of us. I really hope, and you should aim for this. When you meet Jesus, just aim for this. Aim for Jesus to say this. He was a burning, as in he had the zeal and the prophetic fire, and a shining, the holiness was all around him, a shining lamp, and you were willing to rejoice for a while in his light. And that's exactly the level that you should be at. That's exactly what Jesus should say about you when you meet him. Yes, Danny, you were a burning, you had that burning and shining lamp. You had the zeal, you had the holiness that you needed to have. And people were coming. And yes, they were rejoicing in your light for a bit. And that's exactly what people were doing at that time too. It was even religious leaders that were going and they were trying to follow John the Baptist, even though their theology and their doctrines didn't fully align. Like the baptism, there was nothing about the baptism in their theology. However, they could feel, they were blind, they were in their darkness, and they could feel John the Baptist had this light that they wanted to draw near. That's the amazing thing. When you're sourcing that light from God, you can share it to the people around. People can feel it. People can be guided by it. They can get the support from it. So why we need the light, or why do all the individuals need the light? We know we are lost in darkness without Him, exactly as the Bible is saying, and even Jesus said it multiple times. And we often think that it's sin that's keeping people in the dark. But it's not always sin. It can be depression, it can be anxiety, it can be other things that are not related to sin. And people are hurt, as I said, and they think that if coming to the light would actually reveal their secrets or reveal their problems. But in truth, the light does something else. When you come to Jesus, you get the clarity that you need to actually identify what the problem is or what the issue is with you. Another thing that people struggle with quite a lot is the identity. Even up to early 20s, even late 20s, even your 40s, you might not have your identity set up. And as long as you don't have that, you don't understand who you are, you don't understand why you're on earth, you don't know who lives inside you or who can live inside you, you will always have problems and you will always live in darkness. You know what's interesting? People often claim to be boring, or claim to have a boring life, or not to, live at some sort of plateau or very mediocre lifestyle. I tell you, come to the light. When you live in Jesus' presence, there's no day that's boring. You wake up different. Can you imagine waking up and going to work, being happy? Going to work happy. Going to school happy. Because that's how you are when you have light in you. The light heals. But sometimes you need, I was actually reversing. When I was reversing this, the sun was shining exactly on my mirrors. And it's only through that sunlight that I could realize how dirty the mirrors were. And in order for you to realize that you have dirt on you, that you have stitches and marks and things that need to be healed, you need to come to the light to actually realize. At nighttime when you're driving, your mirrors seem to work quite fine. When the sun comes on them, you see how dirty they actually are and how much you need to wash them. So regardless of how dirty you are, man, it can be depression, shame, sin, anxiety, addictions, whatever it may be. You need that sunlight. You need to go through it in order to be healed. Let's say you're at the point where you actually went through all that and you've taken that light on you. But you're wondering how much can you expand that light and how much can you actually influence around you. You are not in control, very interesting, you're not in control of how strong your light or your flash is. When you go on your phone, you can choose now how strong your light is, and you can adjust the dimness. But you can't do that spiritually without having those spiritual practices or disciplines that strengthen that light. So yes, you might hear it quite often, praying, reading the word is what's actually strengthening your light. And He expands the range, the spectrum, everything. He expands your horizon, your area of influence, how far or from what distance can people see you. It all expands. You turn or you go from being a small flashlight or a lantern, and you might turn one day into being a lighthouse, imagine. But it's all done through the spiritual practices, where you are constantly, as Nico was telling us, constantly raising that altar in your life, in your family, in the church, We are constantly dedicated to God. You go through the worship time, you spend time in His Word. That's how you expand that light. I'm just going to draw near the end now because I see time has passed quite quickly. But for anybody that's here and is scared to actually come to light because you might have one small compromise that doesn't let you come to Jesus, you're looking at things the wrong way. You're thinking that you coming to Jesus would shame you. If you go to the doctor and the doctor is shining a light in your eye, in your, I don't know, in your ears, in your mouth, is that light actually hurting you? Or is there to assess what's wrong with you? That's exactly what Jesus is doing when you come to the light. Don't be afraid. Don't be scared of thinking that if I come, people might see or the doctor might say something. Jesus will never do that. Remember the woman caught in adultery? What was she expecting? Oh, a lot of stones are going to come down my way. The doctor might actually start cutting. Even though I'm hurt already, doctor would say, you know what, your arm needs to be cut off. You need to die for what you did. But when you come to the right light, when you come to the Son, to Jesus, that's not how He approaches things. What He does, He shines the light on you so that you can get the clarity that you need in order to fix you, to take away your dirt, your misery, your anxiety, your depression, everything. The truth is, doesn't matter how long the night is, doesn't matter how deep the darkness is, none of this is important. Because day after day, the sun rises again. You may be thinking that, I might have to make my own precautions, put my own measures in place just to make sure I don't hit myself. So yes, you create those rules, those parameters around you. You start walking like this, thinking, yes, I'm going to be safe, I'm going to be fine. You think you need to build your own measures into surviving in the darkness. You light a fire, but that fire is always constantly going to need wood fire. When you're doing things all wrong, because you should not be fighting the darkness. Does the sun ever fight against the darkness? Does the sun ever negotiate? Do you know what? Maybe we can leave this day. We can let this day be dark. Never. The sun never fails to rise again. Jesus is there constantly. His light is shining over the whole earth constantly, every single day. There's no negotiations. There's nothing fighting back. Yes, you can take a small light. We might be those lamps that you can cover sometimes. People can cover us. Our experiences can cover us. But yes, you can be silenced or you can be shut off. But Jesus cannot be silenced. His light cannot be covered. The sun is always going to be there. So I encourage you to come to Him. Now, for those of you that are in the light, and I'm just going to finish off with this experience. It doesn't put me in a great light, to be honest. But I just want to encourage you because I do assume that probably 90% of you are living in the light already. But I want to encourage you to keep your light on all the time. Not to play with it, not to flicker, not to turn it off from time to time. When you go to work, you might turn it off a bit, because sometimes you want to be like the individuals that live in the dark. Sometimes you probably regret. You think, maybe if I was in the dark, I could have experienced that thing and nobody would see it. I was, a couple of years ago, again, similar context as you said previously, I was managing a team where an individual in my team has really annoyed me. And there was another person beside me who I spent time in keeping my light on, in guiding them to Jesus, in talking about Jesus, in shining my light about Jesus on them. It took one word. I said one word wrong about the person that was kind of annoying me at work. One word I said in silence. It wasn't something derogatory necessarily. It wasn't a curse or anything like that. But one word I said wrong, and my light shut off. For a second, 1 second, my light went off. It was enough to cancel out all the guidance that I've given beforehand. How did I know? Well, that person has said to another person, and the other person has said to another person who came up to me and said, yeah, Danny, remember that word you said? It was enough to turn off your light. I'm not saying it with pride, I'm just saying it how careful we need to be with the light that we're shining on the people around us, how much attention we have to pay to those situations where we think, oh, switching the light off wouldn't actually make much of a difference. And then how much more important it is to actually stay close to Jesus, be or have those spiritual practices turned on all the time, have your altar all the time there so that your shine doesn't dim, your light doesn't go away, but you're there to support constantly. You are the lighthouse who never fails, who's always there. That's all I had to say this morning, dear church. I really hope that the light of Jesus will shine upon all of us, and I really hope that we all stay connected to Him as being the source of energy for us. Amen.